now is super cut off.
Who is?
It's okay. I'll just like do this, and then I'll.
Okay, I'm good.
Cool. Everybody good?
Yeah, I should probably get some.
Oh.
I mean, flowing the app is kind of optional. I don't know. What kind of app is it? Well, if it's a tricks app, then actually.
No, it's not a tricks app.
Okay,
I don't.
All right.
I'm not really seeing my one.
You gotta ask sometimes. People switch up and eat them real quick, so I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking of throwing out for you, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
see?
You know, resolve these friendly to him.
Oh Lord, please.
No. Let me know when you're good.
I'm good now.
Time each other, please.
The advantage of security. Securitization is on the rise. Surveillance proves that Volt 120 Trump said renewing the United States world surveillance story, still need a fee for digital privacy law and research 6 years minimal change. It's a lot of eavesdropping from massive American communications. Republican leaders have said the program needs our revision, and that creates authoritarianism, securitizing power, coupled with absence of judicial review, kills any possibility of democracy. That's surely in 12 for civil liberties can fully view the country's land as free and center on the left of the country as recent liberties and national security power form powers under which a country can be considered authoritarian. The president now order warrantless surveillance like Bush Obama successfully pushed immunity of a president can take away your freedom on their authority. The firmest living without a crack rule. Under the teacher government with moving on strict powers on the hope they'll use wisely. 2 scenarios. First is abuse of power. Authoritarianism sequences every impact. That's Kaplan. In 6, a highest harder redefine the properly extensional impact control and totalitarianism. When we were 6 station, we were creating a world of fears, progress, and a world where we first towards working arts, upon hatred will be no love, except love and strive over defeat enemies. There will be no process of life. All pleasures will be destroyed. Second is modeling. Democracy is low and out. Recovery is essential. That's Muga 120 for the first time in over half a century. The democracy is on 3 times pushback against every democratic institution. So visible in struggles of Western Europe and North America. This could be the year the global liberal order dies. Right. On China, the election company holds the appear of authoritarian autocrats and big bad U.S. practices spill over. That's Gates. In 12 penalties, Homeland Security mobilized trends. Actually, the U.S. model of Homeland Security has been exported to other countries. U.S. model of security continues to be defined as American one focus has been USA-led effort to create a global surveillance apparatus has state of exception constitutional laws and human rights are suspended indefinitely. Individuals are called upon to demonstrate their right to exist. Security industrial complex has endless new practices and good models of U.S. democracy prevent human rights abuses and massive impacts. As Kasparov 17. Terror war, military intervention result when America leads back and forth start making progress against world order, terror moves extremely toward North Korea. Their survival started by the free world. Our threat against U.S. history, the leadership against home America cannot leave. There's no unity, strategic stability, great strength, democracy, strong institutions, longer. Planning dictators cannot be beyond their own survival. Democracy is the only proven remedy for every crisis today. War, famine, poverty, and terrorism. The third impact is structural harms. Minority groups are disproportionately targeted from securitization. That's Thoreau. 13. Surveillance will separate enemy welfare. 17. More vulnerable surveillance. Series of women, especially women of color, provide ideological support for basic purpose. Immigrant communities are more likely to be the state of data collection. Marginalized people are subject to the most comprehensive forms of observation. They also enter high levels of surveillance, such as some person groups target are often considered disposable. The class and racial nature expression has been a long history of the U.S. solvency. Within the geographical boundaries of the sovereign United States, the public's right to know ought to be valued above the right to see, the right to privacy of candidates for public office. Will grant generic topic links to avoid unnecessary theory debates. Transparency solves it. It helps citizens find the truth. It sparks activism. That's Newman. 2. Transparency is the remedy to which corruption thrives. Democracy depends on eligible citizens to hold public office accountable. The government perform under veil secrecy. The press is only able to speculate for access to research, ethics, corruption, access to information, critical access to information law, allow individuals to understand the policies, factual basis for such decisions, and the right to know sense of democratic norm that gets modeled globally in peer proof that's planted in the concept of freedom of information. Congress and freedom of information sanctions taking over rejection of economy the law combined new extra rights with government records with strong data protection. The international freedom of information movement stands on the verge of changing democratic governments and entrenched state interests continue to largely attacks the U.S. citing national security and need for privacy is counterweight to freedom framing. Reliability means that consequences matter. That's Nagel. 86. Pleasure is good and pain is bad. No matter whoever takes avoidance of pain and promotion of pleasure as objective reason for action is least possible. That I have reasons are afraid for putting my hand in the hot stove. They would have involuntary reasons. They would have involuntary avoidance reasons that would be motivated to reduce pain because of its effective way to avoid danger. No objective you can possibly overrule or subjective authority. Thus, the standard is maximizing well-being and minimizing harms. Prefer additionally the intrinsic value of people is best respected through to that's committee in 90 violence solely the one who must bear the cost of the act with further effect than many of the persons who bear the cost of our action proves that dignity that transcends any value personal sub-equality that dictates that some must give way for the sake of others and the role of the is to vote for the debater, whether that's discussion to fight dominant institutions. Rejection will never work. Discussions about the state teach valuable real-world skills that allow us to challenge it. That's the naughty. In 14, officers and this is our limited rejection. Freedom of time continues to struggle constitute with screws government that transform them. Power and rights with diverse political states. Government studies increasing about exploration rather than ordering demonizations by formulations. False ethics of political engagement. Such engagement requires tough reflexivity on the consequence of political choices. Not everything's bad, but everything's dangerous. And debates about state-based change are valuable. It's Williams. In 70, is already size of themselves completely from institutions. Self-isolation issue by revolutionary movements is greater from those genes. Those should become acquainted with the methods of changing me more of the relief factor for pressure on the effective struggles of our tactics, plans, analysis, and highly sophisticated application, and rejecting terminal forms of power is not sufficient. Those criticisms neglect the underlying forces that create systems of domination. The task of the revolutionaries to address particular instances to dismantle larger systems of power. That's Atherton in 94. One is showing the transfer points of resistance produced including just society, just the network of power relation forms that and reforming just that passes through apparatuses of institution likewise plays to resist and make revolution possible, similar to the way in which to stabilize the institutional integration of power relationships. And the 1AC encourages transparency and challenging the corrupt status quo. The necessary starting point of criticism requires transcending the generic idea that the state is bad or the state is good, and instead redefining our relationship towards power and finding value out of our voice. That's Giroux. 13. Reformers not justify the language national security, which legitimizes the transformation of schools and surveillance. State students are subject to disciplinary apparatus, limit their capacity for critical thinking, mold them and consumers stripping them of any sense social responsibility, public solution for critical change, cultural apparatus now validates symbolic and real lines, such use of violence and reinforce or fear the other and a stripped down version of security. And saying the case doesn't solve enough is unethical. Before saying reform is impossible, consider what the affirmative does. That's Delgado. And the critique of reform is wrong. Corridors directing authority to disperse funds heating and hospital fund. The resolution that order keeps the families from this may be more than a comfortable academic and warm office paternalism asserts the possibility of revolution later outweigh incremental change may bring a revolutionary change closer. Not all reforms include complacency. Critique of reform misses these possibilities, and critique is useless without a concrete policy option that tells your harms. That's Brian. In 12, the academic failed period of obstruction is good at critiquing poor pros and realistic solutions of alternatives, and it goes on and notice that all structural review made. We express critiques in ways that only an academic can understand. We never make concrete proposals for how we think ought to be reconstructed. How are we just supposed to do anything when we have no proposals? 6 billion people are dependent on production and distribution, and the right flows in, it makes it so much worse. That's Pew in 10. The crisis highlights the ceilings of the state because the massive non-emergent political force of the state because the main institution left the result of the radical left may start the public movement akin to the world nation state. Despite protection that wants to withdraw, most of the people have moved in the opposite direction. Right and neoliberals are capturing the powerful institutions of politics.
Can you give me an example in which like movements have like used the state to like radically like destroy its inherent like oppressive situation?
Wait, can you repeat that one more time?
So you talk about like how this like we can we have to like look at the material harms and like allow policy making to like
I don't think the app is on policy action.
Sure, but like your role about is like policy making.
No, it's not. It's about the discussions we haven't had. We think that framing this discussion in terms of what happens in the future, what we can do in the future, and how our discussions matter is important. I don't think the app necessitates a policy action though. Like the app is a discussion about why democracy and transparency within the government is a good thing.
Okay, what's the text of the role about?
Vote for the debater with the best discussions to fight dominant institutions.
Okay, so what do you like defend as like? Do you defend implementation?
We defend the discussion of the resolution.
Okay, and so how do you like enact the resolution?
We don't enact the resolution. Like
You
this
just
is okay. This is a debate. Like we are not going to we are not policymakers in this round. I think it's important to realize that our discussions can shape the future, but I think where we are in our current position does not matter. Instead, we should have discussions that can make it better for us to actually implement better change in the future.
What does it mean to implement better change?
Well, I think making the state better is important, but I do not think implementation in this round is necessary.
Okay, so but making the state better, right, is like the angle of like us discussing these ideas. That's what you just said, right?
I mean, yes, but
okay.
we are not dependent on implementation.
Sure. So your cards, right, like the okay, that's fine. Can you explain like how in the last card, like the right is able to like it just has like a generic line at the end that says right and neoliberals are capturing the powerful institutions like of politics. Like there's no warrant there. Can you explain that?
Sure. So I think the example is when we are left to only imagination and like post-critical theory to resolve what oppression means in the material world, it just ends up in the right filling in politics. I think a great example is the modern Trump administration. Like this is what happens when people don't focus on politics and don't vote. Then we get left.
Okay, so but like it's crucial for our discussions to like focus on political things and like move us to like vote in different ways to like change these. Like that's what you just said, right?
Well, I think it's important to talk about how the state can get better, but I do not think we should talk in this round about how like a policy implementation. I think I've like made this clear like 4 times.
Okay, that's fine. How does so a lot of times like candidates, right, like Kavanaugh and Trump, like they're exposed to like we understand like the terrible things they've done, like and like they're still voted into office. Like how does the app like counteract this, or like how does the app like ensure?
Are you asking if like the app is like inherent?
No, I'm just like asking like how the app like ensures that like candidates won't be going to office that like when we find out terrible things about them?
Well, I think the app is not a discussion about what happens like when this happens. I think the app is more a discussion that like the United States should be more transparent and that democracy is a good thing. The app doesn't need to defend that. It's not ethically relevant under the framework.
Prep?
Yeah. Starting now. Okay, I used a minute. Shoot, I really have to run to the bathroom. I'm sorry, like I can't.
Okay.
Same.
Also not to steal prep. I'm just gonna stretch. This is wild. I didn't expect to.
I'm gonna run to the store. Anybody
How's
need
it
anything?
Wait, do you teach at TDC?
Yeah.
Oh, Chris Riley was my lab leader.
Yeah, Chris and I are good friends. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. We just asked two other judges, so.
I encourage them to leave. Whoops.
Not sorry. That's a whisper. tournament volunteers just showed me a sign that said, please press submit. And that radically misunderstands what's going on right now.
Did you restart prep?
I'm finished. I'm just pre-flowing my okay.
I don't want to be too hard on you, but that's kind of a prep thing.
Okay. I'm doing. I like just started. Like,
It's okay.
You're cool.
I don't really care.
No, if he says he can.
No, well, I mean,
It's up to you. It's up to you.
I mean, it's like pre-flowing. I guess that's like fine.
Okay. Cool.
I don't know.
Put away my other flows.
Can I see the one on C before it starts?
1 AR theory, no prep C.
Just got the violation.
Before that.
Surprise is good. Oh wait, the order you did say was just one off case, right?
Yep. I go the Apple start and the roll the bat, but
Okay.
I'll tell him. Do that again.
Forgot that it's daylight saving.
Wait, today?
Well,
Tonight.
well, yeah, tonight.
You set your clocks back an hour at 2 a.m.
Hopefully I won't be off at 2. Yeah, we have to drive home tonight because we're from Wisconsin, so.
Yeah, we're a little far for driving.
Yeah.
How long is it? Like 3 hours, 4 hours?
4. Yeah, for we drove to Valley and lost in Octa's Sunday night, so 6-hour drive back to Appleton. Got back at like 2:30 in the morning.
That's a hot hour. Did you go to school next year?
What?
Did you go to school next year?
Thankfully my mom called me out for half the day because I was just dead.
That's beautiful.
Oh my God.
Here we go.
Yep.
No.
Oh, sorry, I say happy.
He said he was going back in?
What?
He said he was going back in? Oh no, he went to go check on his kid. You offered me another room.
Cool.
Nah, he was going to the restroom. I saw him when I was coming out.
Why is it in a PDF?
Dude, that's everyone has that. That's wild. I thought that was a norm.
What, Matt? That look of judgment.
It's okay. I had a few Twizzlers. Relax. Got
What's the
prepared.
order?
One off in case, and then on case I'll start the roll of ballot.
Okay, I got you at 256 of prep. I'm ready.
You know, like, all these looks of judgment are just uncalled for.
No, it's a look of waiting, of patience.
Oh, and then there's a line in the genealogy I read that talks about rape, and there's also talk about just the whole case about settler colonialism. Everyone cool with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Solid.
So, everyone's good? Here's your truth telling of this land. The truth they don't want Minnesota settlers to know. 1851, the treaties of Church Sioux and Mendota were signed, giving virtually the entire state of Minnesota USFG. September 9, 1862, Minnesota governor Alexander Ramsey calls for the forced removal and extermination of the Dakota peoples. November 8, 1862, after many killings, many Dakota people are caught after concentration camps in Mankato and Fort Snelling, Crow Creek. December 26, 1862, Abraham Lincoln orders the largest mass execution in U.S. history, hanging 38 Dakota men at Fort Snelling. January 3, 1863, 300 Dakota people dying in concentration camps, while many surviving women and children were raped. September 23, 1863, Minnesota pays $200 per Dakota person killed. 2008 December, Minnesota celebrates 150 years of statehood. November 2nd, or 3rd, 2018, we stand here today in Apple Valley, Minnesota, occupying the land of the Dakota, asked to debate about a cancer right to privacy. In the links, the AF endorses the discourse of rights throughout the affirmative in their advocacy. The discourse of rights reinscribes structures of power and appeal to politics of recognition. Tim Wyman, PhD candidate at Berkeley, Res. 2016. The interest of accomplishment were developed as a result of evolution of inclusion. Our rights-based discourse supports structures of power, rights frame, self-determination, claims, and political recognition. Self-determination is divorced from political entitlements, pursuit of rights, leads indigenous peoples to frame their goals in a state-centered rather than community-centered way. Domestication is co-option in a system, intentionally extends some form of political participation, and indigenous political agendas also to fit the dominant norms of the structure. And the AF endorses the concept of democracy in their advocacy of the case, and democracy is built on framing the indigenous as savage in need of saving. Narratives of democracy are justifying tool for the settler. Lorenzo Veracini, professor of history at Swinburne University, writes 2008. The encounter between a settler and the bearer of democratic ideals and geography settles the land that is unframed by social relations to the people, that history, a place without history, and images of democratic systems are only made possible by comprehensive disavowal of the presence of indigenous groups, of the violence against indigenous people, along with the slavery, both define the limits of a democracy, ongoing narrative of frontier democracy, a crucial psychological mechanism, and the affirmative endorses the right to know in the advocacy of the case, and the settler right to know fuels colonization. Associate Professor of Critical Race Studies and Eve Tuck, and Associate Professor of Ethnic Studies Wang Yang, right, 2014. Under coloniality, knowledge of self and others became the philosophical justification of the acquisition of bodies and territories. The right to conquer is intimately connected to the right to know. Settler colonial knowledge is premised on the frontiers and exercise of the felt entitlement to transgress these limits, and the impact of the logical elimination against indigenous people. Indigenous people must be ontologically formed into ghosts and eliminated through genocide. The rise ontological Tucking 12. Settler colonialism, most important concern is land. Settlers make indigenous land into their social capital. Disruption of indigenous relations to land represent ontological violence. This finds research, shape, occupation, settler colonialism, destruction. Not an event that the land is remade into property. Ontological relationships to land are made savage for settler. Indigenous people are in the way over time through law and policy. Indigenous people must be made into ghosts. And the alternative is a practice of refusal, complete incommercibility. We should reject the resolution entirely for its settler colonial discourse of democracy, rights, and knowing only an ethic of refusal can deconstruct the state. Tucking 12. An ethic of incommercibility guides moves that unsettled instance contrast to reconciliation. Incommercibility acknowledges questions need not be answered for decolonization into existence. The framework decolonization is not accountable to settler future to do not. An ethic of incommercibility means will actually settler future debating the hope that settlers may be commercial to native peoples. It means removing conditional clauses under right settler innocence. Decolonization is not an and, it is an elsewhere. Don't let them perm. Incommercibility can never be co-opted by settler colonialism. This is the very definition. If I prove a single link, the perm fails. That's why Tucking literally say decolonization is not an and, it is an elsewhere. Next on the framework. The role of the ballot is to debate the resolution through a sound methodological praxis. Form comes for content, your methodology, procedure, arguments for against the resolution. The land we debate on was cleared through the genocide of the Dakota. Debaters must provide a methodology to counteract this history of settler colonialism. This is what it means to have a sound methodology before they attempt to engage in arguments about the resolution. Resolution debate is important, not being genocidal, just a prerequisite. I do this through the genealogy. Genealogies are a practice of refusal that combats and moves the innocent to create active indigenous resistance within the educational space. James Burns Press at New Hampshire University and colleagues around 2016. Surviving narratives and gender native presence, set the historical absence counter narratives, illustrate active resistance, create active presence narratives, illustrate the incommercibility that unsettles moves to innocence embedded in settler colonialism and social justice movements. Often thought is exempt from indigenous decolonizing analysis. Now to the AF. On their role of the ballot, they say it's like us like discussing ideas for be able to go out and counteract these systems, make the system better. This is functionally just policy making. On their wiki they had policy making, and so I prepped these responses will say policy making, but really what it means when you hear that is just attempting to make the state better, finding different ways in order to allow the state to continue and make it innocent. So number one, the forced removal of the Dakota outweighs the genocide. The Dakota outweighs the debaters getting policy making skills. We must address that this room is cleared for us through genocide before we focus on policy making the state better. Even if policy making could be important, not being genocide is a prerequisite for my role about they need to address and combat the that they're standing within a genocidal regime before they can even access their impacts. And 2, the Dakota have already tried policymaking and reforming the state and has failed them. Little according to the Dakota justice policy and government when they signed the Treaty of True History in the genealogy where they were promised land and resources and instead were carted off to concentration camps and hung and raped as a trap. 3, crossed by the Tucking-Yang impact card of the state is defined in opposition to the indigenous and thus will always reproduce logical elimination. Indigenous folks are seen as savages, thus can't be resolved in the context of the state. And 4, there's the naughty evidence which says that policymaking is the only real world thing that we can learn and go out and do. Policymaking frames literally what is possible as what is engaging with the state. That they say that the only real education, they literally define the boundary between possibility and impossibility, reality and imaginary, on whether the settler is included. This is the definition of a logical elimination that the talk card talks about because it's defining indigeneity as abstract, imaginary, and impossible. On the Appleton 94 card, decolonization isn't abstract. It's a real and can be practiced. Russell means to know that policymaking wasn't the only option when he went out and occupied Mount Rushmore, Woodiney, the BIA building, Plymouth Rock, countless courtrooms. The list goes on and on. He took his people, took back their land. Don't act them like working outside the state isn't possible. They're just so entrenched in settler colonialism they can't imagine anything else. And 6, on Williams, we have no need to learn the tools of the master in order to take it down. Mean Peruse. This only allows for settler futurity. The American Indian movement didn't have to learn the tools of the settler to do all the decolonial work they did. We need to forget the settler institution, not learn them. And 6, on Giroux, complete rejection is good. Nobody was like, hey, like to the Nazis, we can't say state bad. We might as well like try to do something good, right? They rejected that on form because they were a genocidal government, and the United States is a genocidal government, and it should be rejected in the exact same manner. On Bryant, like the means, like Russell Means in the American Indian movement show how like decolonial practices and a practice of refusal of the alternative can be material going out into the world, and like us still having discussions about like material things we can do. And then on the Delgado evidence, I'm proving that there is no hope and that like you just simply can't solve. Next, on the standard util can't be under my roll of the ballot. So if I'm in the roll of the ballot, don't worry about that because they don't provide a methodology. Now let's look at the links. Their Turley card asks for an increase in democracy, and crossed by the Veracini card, which shows how the democratic ideals they hold up, the democracy hold up, is premised on framing the indigenous savage like, oh hey, look at that Westland, look at those savages, we need to colonize them and civilize them through democracy. And also crossed by the Tucking-Yang evidence that shows that the settlers state will always be authoritarian to indigenous peoples, which turns their impacts because they can never, by allowing the settlers state to continue and go through forward, they're allowing indigenous people will always be under authoritarian regime, and they can't solve because indigeneity seem as savage and must be authoritarian. Also on the mug card, we have another democracy link. They attempt to uphold a system of democracy and ontology. And also on the blatant 9 card, they're trying to spread democracy all over the world, which once again links to the K. And so even if you don't buy my roll of the ballot, if even under policymaking, if we propose an idea into the world that is genocidal and tributes my impacts, we shouldn't allow for that idea if it's genocidal.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
What is democracy?
Sure. So democracy is like this tool that like the West has used to say, oh hey, like everyone needs to be included. We have to have like a civilized society of like everybody being included, and it's defined in opposition to the ontological existence of indigeneity.
Can democracy encompass good things, or is democracy always bad?
Democracy will always be defined in opposition to the savage of the indigenous.
So it's bad.
Like you can like claim like.
Well, dude, yes or no?
Democracy is always genocidal.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's awesome. Does democracy exist in the U.S. today?
The United States claimed and used this idea of democracy, whether or not it exists. They use the idea of democracy to perpetuate colonialism.
Yes, democracy exists in the U.S.
The United States has used the idea of democracy to colonize the land.
Okay. Should indigenous populations be able to access that democracy?
No, right? This is part of the Wyman card. The whole point of decolonial movements is allowing indigenous people to have their own sovereignty.
So to clarify, indigenous populations should not be able to access democracy?
Right? Yeah, because, yes.
Okay.
Because democracy is defined in opposition to them as proposed in the Tucking-Yang and Veracini.
How do I propose a genealogy?
Sure. So the way in which like you like have a sound methodological practice that my roll of the ballot talks about is like you just put forward some way of recognizing the land, which you don't do in the 1AC.
So the advocacy talks about, it doesn't use the word United States. Instead, what it does is within the geographical boundaries. How is that not recognition of indigenous lands?
You didn't even say the word Dakota. You didn't even know the tribe
sorry.
was
Okay,
here.
so I could. Okay, that's fine.
It's also more than that. Like you can't just say one sentence and then be like, "That's my methodology." Your methodology has to go throughout your entire case. If you say like, "Oh, like I recognize the colonization of this land," and then go on to support democracy, that's not a clear methodology, right? The methodology has to be consistent.
Cool. That's fine. So can oppression happen to people who are not indigenous?
Yes.
Okay. How does the critique take into account those people?
Sure. So, all right, the settler state has many ways of like utilizing and oppressing folk. Like, so Jody Bird articulates, right, like slavery and like black folk as like a rivance within the settler colonial system as a way to like help further colonize the land and by exploiting their labor.
Was that articulated in the 1NC? I don't see like a piece of evidence that articulates.
No, but I'm just like articulating to you like how settler colonialism furthers like and harms other populations.
Cool, that's fine. I guess that's fine. We'll start with 4 minutes now. Is the alternative concrete, or is it an imagination?
I mean, like, sure. So it's a theory, but like it can materialize in
Okay, so
concrete
it's
ways.
an
Like,
imagination?
no, but like the
Okay, so
American
it's an
Indian movement,
imagination.
the American Indian movement was a material way of a practice of refusal. Like, I don't know more is a material way of a practice of refusal. The practice of refusal can like conceptualize it and materialize in many different ways, philosophical and material.
What does complete rejection look like then?
But like, if I can prove that something is settler colonial, it should be rejected. Like,
No,
rejection
that's
is.
That's not. I'm asking, what does the alternative look like?
Yeah, so we should reject all settler colonial institutions.
Oh, okay, that's fine. The order is going to be advantage, framing, the critique. Oh, there's one. Or just send it in the text. Unless, like, you want me to send it in, like, an actual doc.
Huh?
I just sent, like, the card in the text. You want me to, like, send it in the doc?
How much prep did you have?
212.
Okay.
1 second.
You said 1 second.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
I just said they have 6-pocket joggers for scrubs now. That's all I'm saying. Can be stylish, modern mirrors.
6-pocket joggers.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But like for scrubs for like nurses.
Can you, like, oh, sorry, I was just like, sometimes he doesn't speak.
Yeah, you're right.
Let me know when y'all are good.
You're starting on case.
Yep.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Cool. The modern United States has securitized the increasing power of the surveillance state with no judicial check on it. Means the government can do whatever they want with no bridle. That means authoritarianism, abuse of power, outweighs any impact because the government can control its citizens and take away and give rights as they please and make them all work in state interest. No individual can truly feel rational or free when all communication can be seen by the government. It also makes the U.S. set a bad democratic norm. The Trump administration has set a standard that control of citizens is okay under modern democracy. That gets modeled globally. Democracy solves the root cause of every impact because when the U.S. has set bad democratic laws in the past, terror, war, famine, and poverty all increase globally. It also stops massive structural harms on marginalized communities through things like stop and frisk policies that are propped up through securitizing information and surveillance without check. Only by setting better democratic norms can we create better global modeling to check authoritarian governments. Knowing more about our candidates is a starting point to a more transparent government and sets global standards that spark activism. If we win defense to any other offense, you vote automatically on Case because he didn't contest Case offense at all in the one it's on. So framing. The role of the ballot is to vote for the debate or the best discussion to fight dominant institutions, preferred on real-world applicability. We can't completely reject institutions because new institutions will always rise up. The only concrete solution is understanding how to work within the state and find life out of it. Our Williams, Zanotti, and Atherton evidence say that the only way to find power and fix institutions is by understanding the oppressors in their tactics. Also, across the players Delgado, Bryan, and Puke evidences, their evidence is completely theoretical and complete rejection, which is not concrete. Millions of people are dependent upon institutional changes and discussion about institutional practices. The negative completely avoids that by saying that we can just start with absolute rejection, which our Puke evidence has proven that it just ends up ceding politics to the right. On the underlying byline, you say that the app is just policy making, but the app doesn't defend implementation. We don't rely on it. We think democracy is a good thing and knowledge about the government is good. That is our only relationship to the state out of the 1AC, and the only thing that is ethically relevant under the 1AC framework. You say Zanotti, you say the critique is real world against Zanotti, but your idea of imagination and possibility does nothing and cannot account for other kinds of oppression absent indigenous folks. On the Atherton evidence, you say decolonization is an abstraction, but the K is an imagination. It is not an actual action and cannot be applied in the real world. Whereas the affirmative is an understanding about how democracy can be applied within state and local, within statewide institutions. And whereas they conceded that the critique just ends up ceding to those institutions and ends up ceding to the right. Only our rule of ballot can properly break down institutions. We will always understand that the state will exist, and we just try to find hope out of it. Go on to the K. The alternative is fatalist. You return land, not agency. That's Macau. And Training 13, SET attributes to the suspended temporality. This is structuralism can excuse us from the action by presenting the actions determined SET is not given account of the condition for settler colonial devices can result in colonial fails and such can be dependent on the legacy of indigenous resistance. This makes it difficult for critiquing colonization features without calling into question the decolonization project. Indigenous people are just to be victims of an unstoppable colonizing state. Several critical settler perspectives can reproduce prescribing of information attachment which defeat mortally are highlighted at the expense of understanding indigenous agency. Countercard agency. Second, the app outweighs democratic values that the affirmative fights for encompass ways that would materially benefit indigenous populations. It's not state action. It's non-reformist reform. Three is that the negative concedes and cross-exes that indigenous people should have access to a kind of democracy and finding their own communities. The advocacy and the AC specifies that the affirmative does not subject indigenous populations to Western forms of democracy. It also, which turns all of their links, we acknowledge things like native sovereignty, and the negative assumes democratic reform, which cannot encompass material benefits for indigenous populations, which is literally their argument. Fourth is that none of their links apply because the affirmative is not a policy action. It's just a discussion about how the state should be better. It's a discussion about whether the United States being a democracy is good or not. These are benefits that come from democratic values. The affirmative doesn't implement a policy. The affirmative is just a discussion that democracies ought to value the right to know. Five is firm to both. The affirmative does not preclude giving back the land. The app acknowledges the non-sovereign United States territories and did not endorse U.S. ownership of indigenous lands on the rule of the ballot. It's essentialist. Saying that we need to focus on just indigenous voices is bad and authorizes other forms of structural oppression. Reject it. It's arbitrary and it impacts self-serving.
Alright, 3 minutes left. I will start that now.